What's up, everybody? I just did a video about the Fell Dog at his loserville performances. This is live without a net, by the way. Not using a script on this video. Whenever I rate albums, I never use a script, so now is no different. But yes, I wanted to talk about the main attraction of Loserville, which is Limp Bizkit. And just kind of talk about them and go through their albums and kind of rank them from, S tier to D tier. Limp Bizkit have always seemed to, not always, but actually until very recently, they've somehow been able to slalom their way through the whole, the cool bands and the bands that kind of have been legendary since day one, like Rage Against the Machine and Tool. And then you have the other spectrum of bands like Crazy Town and Hoobastank, where it's just like they were never really cool and are more lamer now than ever. But Limp Bizkit was somewhere in between. In the late 90s, early 2000s, Limp Bizkit reigned supreme with their second album, Significant Other, and their third album, Chocolate Starfish and the Hot Dog Flavored Water, selling bajillions of copies of records. And then they kind of started to slowly fall off as music tastes began to change, and that whole frat boy bro rock wasn't really in vogue anymore. I think Woodstock 99 kind of helped kill that, but not completely.
That's some tight shit right there, that crowd surfing on the plywood.
It certainly still manifested after that incident with, the whole panels of the infrastructure being ripped off and Fred Durst literally crowd surfing on one of those panels, not seeing the inherent problem with any of this. Limp Bizkit was at their peak relevance at that time, their peak people taking them seriously, and they had a solid, 3-year run where they were not only popular but also taken seriously by music fans, not so much the critics. The critics never liked Limp Bizkit, and of course, why would they? The intellectual types are not going to fuck with a band like that. But they definitely, after their fourth album, results may vary, they took a nosedive and spent about 15 plus years in this trough of just being terminally uncool. And then something happened, after some daylight had been put in between Limp Bizkit and their audience, people started becoming more nostalgic for songs like Break Stuff and My Way and Nookie and songs like that. And you would hear them as a DJ, a karaoke DJ. I hear people doing these songs more and more now. And this weird shift has happened in this post-irony era that we live in with Gen Z. It's like Limp Bizkit is cool, but not cool in the way of the traditional sense. They're so obviously over the top that in some weird way it's almost like, oh, well, these guys are just playing characters and surely they're not really like this. And that's what people were saying about Corey Feldman, when no, I was there. In all reality, that's literally how Limp Bizkit acted. That's how Fred Durst acted. That frat boy, dude bro energy was 100% legitimate. There was nothing ironic about it. But Fred's a smart businessman in a lot of ways. I mean, he signed some acts that went on to do very well, like Puddle of Mud and Stained. Oh, God. They sold a lot of records. So he's a good businessman, and I think he saw the temperature. He read the temperature in the room, and he realized, you know what? Let's lean into the fact that we're seen as this corny, Limp Bizkit, kind of thing. And let's lean into it and, put out a new record, get the band back together. Literally the name of the record is Limp Bizkit Still Sucks. The lead single is called Dad Vibes. And Fred is dressing up like a fucking clown on stage these days. And people are loving it. They can't get enough of it. They feel, it just feels about right. It's like, okay, good. He's not that crowd surfing frat douche anymore. He's almost like dressing up like the clown that everyone pretty much thinks he is. I thought it would be fun to go through and just kind of rank their albums based on what I actually think about them. And I'm also kind of ranking them based on outside of my opinion, where it probably historically should stand. So let's get into that right now. I've made some notes on my little phone. I didn't have to make any notes for Significant Other and Chocolate Starfish because I literally wore those CDs out as a kid listening to the fuck out of them. $3 Bill Y'all is another CD I bought a little bit later on, and I kind of thought, well, it was their first album, probably going to be rough around the edges, so I tended to stay away from those types of albums when I was younger. I kind of wanted the cream of the crop, which kind of makes me a douchebag on some level. All right, so their Limp Bizkit's first album, $3 Bill Y'all, came out in 1997. Oh, no, 1997, I was right. Came out in 1997, and for, they were smart. Again, always riding kind of the wave of being like a few steps ahead of what everyone else is doing. This was kind of before new rock and new metal became these like household institutions that they would later go on to become in, say, like by 99, by 2000. So this album was pretty ahead of its time in a lot of cases. There were a lot of bands that were fusing the rap rock sound around this time, but they were just all pretty bad. None of them really stuck out. I mean, that's why I'm not recalling any of them. All very samey, but with this album, $3 Bill Y'all, this new charismatic frontman, Fred Durst, he already came with a personality and a style to him that was kind of undeniable. Not a lot of bands you think about the shy lead singer who's all brooding and gloomy, but not the case with Fred Durst. He was a hype man. He was a promoter, a self-promoter. He is the reason why Limp Bizkit got as big as they did, forming connections with Korn when they came through Jacksonville. And yes, I will start out by saying this first album by them has Jacksonville, Florida stank all over it, my hometown that I still reside in to this day. He does a shout-out song at the end of this record. It's called Indigo Flow, and it's like he's literally just... I knew he did it on Significant Other, but I didn't know he did it on the first record. I just never paid the album that much attention. He's literally shouting out all these very specific Jacksonville references. He mentions the Jacksonville Jaguars, our NFL team that from here at one point. He mentions a place downtown, the infamous Milk Bar, run by apparently Danny Wimmer, the festival impresario these days. He's become a big name in all things rock festivals, but at the time he apparently had associations with the Milk Bar, which hasn't existed in Jacksonville for many, many years. But if you meet an old-timer in Jacksonville, they will always bring up the Milk Bar. That was Limp Bizkit's stomping grounds. So there's a lot of Jacksonville on this record, which looking back, it's like, wow, I mean, I guess they really do own the fact that they're from Jacksonville, or at least Fred is, because I think he spent time in like North Carolina or something at one point too. But anyway... So there was some really solid tracks off this first album. You had obviously Counterfeit, which I think is most people's favorite song off of this record, unless Faith is more your jam, but I feel like that's kind of the obvious choice. Counterfeit is just a badass song. It was, again, innovative for the time. I would recommend listening to this CD with headphones. There's a lot of interplay between the panning, between the left ear and the right ear as far as the instruments, kind of like maybe how AC/DC would do, where Malcolm would be in one ear and Angus would be in the other ear. Really interesting guitar tones, innovative riffs, samples of, like, say, the organ in that song sounded really cool. Just, I think that they were doing what a lot of bands were trying to do, but they just had the better ingredients. They had the superior musicians. I mean, you had from the start DJ Lethal, Wes Borland, Fred Durst, John Otto, Sam Rivers. I mean, the backup band behind Fred Durst is kind of impeccable to a certain degree. I said this on my Significant Other review I did many years ago, that you take the vocals out of a Limp Bizkit record and you almost have a Tool record. I mean, that's how intricate some of these parts are. And then other parts just fucking rock. So Pollution, track 2. I mean, I would say there's a solid half of this album is good and worth listening to. The album definitely does start to sag in the middle there with the songs such as Stalemate and Clunk, but then you get the big cover of Faith in the middle of the record, or towards the end actually, which injects some much needed life into it. All the instruments were just a cut above the other new rock bands at that time. I did always wonder why there was a song called Stink Finger on here. That's okay. This was back at a time when, in the music industry, when you didn't need every single song in the album to be amazing. You kind of only needed like one or two songs. The more the better. But I mean, if you had two solid singles, which they did with Counterfeit and Faith, you'd pretty much move units just based off of the two songs. So the rest of the album didn't have to be great, and it certainly wasn't. But with all that being said, I would solidly place this in the B category, considering that about half the record is, forgettable and not really worth listening to. They even include a demo called Leech as the second to last song, and I'm wondering why would you include a demo on your album? Just leave it off and finish it. But I don't know. That's maybe they were trying to flesh out the track listing. Up next, obviously, we have Significant Other, and for Limp Bizkit, this would be their S-tier album, their premiere album. This was the second Limp Bizkit album I ever got. The first one was Hot Dog Flavored Water, and I believe both of them were the censored versions, which was super lame. But yeah, they went out of their way, and even on to this day on Spotify, if you go and check, they have the censored and uncensored versions of this album. Now, if you're wanting to move units in Walmart and more red states where people are more conservative about swearing and stuff like that, you want to have a censored version, so now you're catering to everybody. But yeah, this, for a nu metal classic record, it doesn't get much better than Significant Other. The intro was quirky, and then it kicks in with, a typical fat John Otto beat with this, kind of pull-off distorted guitar riff by Wes Borland, and it just kind of kicks in, and there's swagger, there's cockiness. It feels like Fred has taken his rightful place in the music scene as he always knew it to be. I don't think Fred was ever anybody who seemingly lacked confidence. I mean, if he did, he does a good job of faking it on this album and acting like he's the most cockiest motherfucker you've ever met. This was one of those years. 1999 was a very weird year in the sense of how much good movies came out, records, TV shows. Now, if you take this in the context of 2024, yeah, Limp Bizkit's cheesy, Limp Bizkit's corny and all that, whatever. But at the time, I mean, this record fucking slaps. The lyrics, of course, are cringe-inducing in certain parts, problematic in other parts, like the song No Sex, where essentially Fred is saying, should have left my pants on next time, but you had to let me dive right, and kind of putting the blame on the girl for allowing him to have sex with her. This was the kind of attitudes that were completely accepted and not questioned whatsoever back in 1999. Of course, you have their breakout hit Nookie. I mean, yes, the Faith song, it definitely moved some units, but Nookie was really the culture changing song. It was the music video with him in the puffy jacket and the girls dressed like Fred Durst, the backwards red baseball cap, and just the weirdness of Wes Borland, and the whole Limp Bizkit lore was kind of unfolded in front of you in one fell swoop. And then, of course, you have the today still very popular and relatable break stuff with one of the most simplest guitar riffs in hard rock history. But man, was that a powerful groove that locked into when the bass and drums kicked in. And I mean, just one of those days where you don't want to wake up. Everything is fucked. Everybody sucks. I mean, it's like, yeah, instantly it's like, oh, I'm relating to this. I am feeling this way, whatever. I mean, skin your ass with a chainsaw. I never quite understood those lyrics. Didn't understand how that was supposed to be like all that threatening. Like, oh man, you're going to skin my ass raw with a chainsaw? That sounds a little bit homoerotic if you ask me. But yeah, I mean, classic song. What do you do? And after that, Rearranged, which is kind of one of they would do these kind of guitar, hip-hop based ballad type songs. And this is, Rearranged is a classic. Do-do-do-do, do just think about it. All that shit. I know, that was cool. Wasn't that cool? You want me to hear you do it again? Yeah, sorry. You're welcome for that. Then you have songs like I'm Broke, where again, the music's cool, but he's basically just talking about like being broke, which I mean, I guess is relatable if you're, a teenager or something like that. Jesus, I gotta hurry my ass through this. We're already at like 17 minutes here. Then you have a song like Nobody Like You, which had some interesting features. You had Jonathan Davis featuring on there. And then you even had Scott Weiland from Stone Temple Pilots. And you can hear him in there, like, at certain parts. He sings, like, one or two phrases. And it's really random, of all people. But I guess Scott Weiland was limping with the biscuit. Again, all the music off of here is great. It's just a matter of, like, do you want to deal with Fred's lyrical style? Of course, he's got this album starts the tradition of kind of having a rapper on every single record that he would do. On this one, it was End Together Now, which was also a single featuring Method Man. Seemingly no band involved. This is all just samples and hip-hop beats and synthesizers and all that. But no, it's the music video where they're jumping on the walls and ceilings. I remember that as a kid, and I remember thinking, this shit's dope as fuck. Like, this is 1999. Man, this is the future. Now you look back at it, and it's like, God, that is so 90s. But, at the time, it felt fresh. What can you say? Solid. So up next, we get chocolate starfish. Wait, what is it? Chocolate starfish and the hot dog flavored water. I'm going to go ahead and put this in the A tier. I feel like around this point, the production quality had gone way up. This was Limp Bizkit's most successful album. This was really when Limp Bizkit had something with Significant Other, and if they had released a dud after it, they would have probably been relegated to the bargain bin of nu metal bands, historically speaking. But when they followed it up and they kind of 10x'd the ego, 10x'd the cockiness and swagger, and wrote even more catchy musical riffs with the guitar and the bass and the drums and the DJ. They took it to the next level, but to me, it got way over commercialized by Chocolate Starfish. Wasn't the biggest fan of this album, not as much as Significant Other. Just the cockiness was brimming off of Fred Durst at this point. He knew he was the shit. They had singles like My Generation, which I think is still a badass drum beat at the beginning of the song. Then, of course, Fred Durst shouts out the Matthews Bridge, which is a bridge that I avoid going over because it is scary as hell. It goes up way too high, and it is narrow. And shouting out more Jacksonville on the third record, which, again, that's cool. I mean, we need something to put us on the map more than, I don't know, Leonard Skinner. But do you want Limp Bizkit to be that band? I don't think you do, but it happens, so we just have to deal with it. Of course, you had My Way. I'm going to do things my way or the highway. I thought it was very poppy. Then you had the various Roland, like the air raid vehicle and the urban assault vehicle, and one was more rappy. And then by the time Roland came out, it's like, ugh, give me a break, man. This shit is just gone full on corny. And once again, I believe he had the backup Limp Bizkits with their Fred attire donned, and at that point, they're playing on a rooftop with a helicopter shot, and it's like, all right, I get it. You're big shit now. The rapper, there's actually several rappers on this one. You got Exhibit on Get Your Groove On, and then you have the Roland Urban Assault Vehicle where you have DMX, you have Method Man, Redman. It's produced by Swiss Beats. So, yeah, this album, glitzy, just showing out. It's got the hard rock and heavy metal sounds. It's got the hip hop. It's literally like the perfect CD that you would want to have driving to the mall, like being a teenager in 2000, which is the year that this came out. But for me, this is when they got kind of a little overblown for me. I think Boiler is the hidden gem on this record. It was a single, but it's not ever really talked about, and I never see anyone singing it at karaoke, which is, I feel lame every time I have to say that phrase, but it is what it is, people. It's how I'm able to sit in front of you right now and make my YouTubes. So after, now I got to go back to my notes because those two albums I was familiar with. So after this record came out, Wes Borland was kind of at like a crossroads in his music career where it's like, do I want to stick with this cash cow even though I'm getting bored creatively, or do I want to go off and do something creative and just, never mind the cash, I'd rather get my creativity out? Well, he chose the latter and he left the band. So then Limp Bizkit starts this, or Fred Durst rather. I feel like Fred Durst is the ringleader of every decision Limp Bizkit makes. He chooses to do this I remember this clear as day. He chooses to do this nationwide guitar search for the most badass guitarists out there. They got all these guitar centers and like sift through hundreds of prospective guitar players. That might be an interesting video in and of itself to make. And they do all of this, and it's like, I'm thinking to myself as a kid, I was like, are they really going to did any of these like civilians really think they're going to have a chance at becoming the next guitar player for one of the biggest rock bands at that time in the world? So I kind of knew that this was probably some publicity stunt, and it was, because they didn't end up choosing any of them. They didn't settle on any of them, and there was hundreds of guitarists that they sifted through. They eventually went with guitarist Mike Smith of the band Snot. Not super familiar with them, but I know that they were one of the more harder rock bands of the 90s, so they went with him. And apparently he didn't have a whole lot of input on, well, surprise, surprise, the new guy's not going to have a whole lot of input on the guitars. Apparently Durst had a large role in writing the guitar parts. It's certainly, you can tell, this album sold poorly compared to their previous two records, but it still eventually did go platinum. There were like rumors that the name of this record was going to be called Panty Sniffer. And it's like, dude, please don't do that. You're not Blink-182. You can't get away with it. You can't pull it off. He even says a line in the, I think the one single off, no, there was two. The main single off this record, Eat You Alive, he makes a reference in the lyrics to sniffing on those panties, yeah! So yeah, he mentions that. Feels like on this record there's like the confidence and the swagger and the glitz of the record before it, Hot Dog Flavored Water, is just totally gone. This album feels rudderless. All of that confidence seems to have been sapped in one fell swoop by the loss of their guitar player, and I would say one of the most creative members of the band, both aesthetically and musically. This felt like the Hangover album after Chocolate Starfish. It's like, yeah, we were in the limo, and I was sticking my head out of the ceiling window and doing coke off a stripper's tit and yada yada yada, and then the next day you feel like shit and you're hungover, and that's what this record literally feels like. The lyrics are darker. He's dealing with darker themes that a more confident, cocky Fred surely would never fret about whatsoever, because he's the shit. Metacritic gave this record a 33 out of 100, so that kind of shows you the overall feeling on this album, and I can see why. I mean, it's a bloated record with 16 tracks. It's a 68-minute long record. When you don't have your original guitar player anymore, why are you putting out so much material? So the songs that I guess I tolerate off this record is Eat You Alive is okay. Underneath the Gun I liked. It very much didn't sound like nu metal. There's some alternative rock elements on here for sure. The token rapper on this record is Snoop D-O-double-G. Who else? He's been on Insane Clown Posse's records. He's been on Corey Feldman's records. This man will show up if the price is right. Artistic integrity be damned, as I've said before. And then on this record, we get the Behind Blue Eyes cover that was featured in the Gothica movie, and that song blew the fuck up on the radio. That was Limp Bizkit's last moment in the sun, as I've said before, because it was just played to death. No, poor Fred. I feel like Kurt Cobain and Elvis. I can relate to both of them because I'm a legend too. He even has tattoos of them on his chest, which adds to the douchiness. This album definitely suffers from no Wes Borland. The guitars are just not doing anything innovative and unique. The thing that you liked Limp Bizkit for to begin with. And I mean, Jesus Christ, I'm looking at these track lengths. They average about 4 minutes and 30 seconds a piece, which is ungodly long nowadays. 16 tracks, that long. That's just way too much music at once, I feel like. The Fred's rap on Red Light, Green Light with Snoop Dogg, his lyrics are so fucking awful. Freak baby, freak, freak baby, freak baby, freak, freak baby. It's so bad, dude. This is when I think people were kind of like starting to be over Limp Bizkit. Like, okay, we've had enough already with the Limp Bizkit. We're tired of limping with them. And I feel like this was also kind of one of their last real attempts to like be artistes and be kind of like taken seriously. But definitely, I'm going to put this in the C tier because there, believe it or not, is worse Limp Bizkit out there. And I only put it in the C tier because there's like 3 or 4 songs on there that I will tolerate as halfway decent. All right, up next we have the Unquestionable Truth Part 1. Funny enough, there will never be an Unquestionable Truth Part 2, so we're just left with a Part 1 for seemingly no reason. At this point, Wes rejoins the band. They got rid of Mike, and Wes is back. So everyone was kind of anticipating this record. Now, even though they consider this an EP, I consider it an LP, because if you're going to say Limp Bizkit Still Sucks is an LP, which clocks in at about 30 minutes, this album also clocks in at about 30 minutes. And so, yeah, if that's an LP, then this one is too. Funnily enough, even though Wes rejoined the band, John Otto wasn't present for a lot of the recording of this record, apparently. This record it's a weird record. All the songs are the key, the channel, the truth. It's supposed to be some kind of a, I guess, interweaving concept, and it's not very good. The song "The Truth" is probably the best song on there. Musically, it's interesting. Fred's singing and lyrics, they're not so bad, although trying to get all deep and conceptual is not Fred's strong point whatsoever. You know, he has a song on here called "The Priest," I believe, and it's about, Catholic priests being martyrs and all that. And, although there's nothing wrong with having that as the subject of your song, Fred delivers it in such an on-the-nose way. He does not have any kind of, like, tasteful lyricality to his writing. It's just very, like, send my kid to church so you can fuck him. Fuck that. And it's just, of course, that's how Fred's going to word it. No subtlety there, Fred. Just go out and say it. We've departed the whole fun era of Limp Bizkit a long time ago. Even though this record came out in 2005, it feels like so far removed from Chocolate Starfish, which came out only 5 years earlier. Just, there's no more partying, there's no more fun. This is a dark record. It's a fuck you to anybody who liked any of the party time Limp Bizkit. And it was a weird sounding record. It sounded like a bunch of disjointed jam sessions that lacked any kind of real creativity. It's like they all got together and they're like, all right, well, let's bring the band back together and see if we still have the magic. And it didn't lead to really anything that was all that good. The album sold very poorly on that matter. It's probably one of their poorest selling records of all time. Mainly because Fred Durst did not want to promote it. He basically shadow dropped this album, a decision that Wes Borland did not agree with. And I got to agree, back at that time when CDs and physical media were still a very much viable form of moving your music, if I don't know that the thing exists, how am I going to buy it or listen to it for that matter? Nowadays, bands rappers, bands, whatever, they shadow drop albums all the time. Eminem famously shadow dropped Kamikaze out of nowhere. And, if you follow them on Spotify or whatever, you just get a notification that says, hey, this thing's out now. Back then, it was a little different. So, this album overall is it's bad. D tier. Up next, we get to Gold Cobra, which came out 5 years after this in 2010, or actually 2011, my bad. This album was such a flagrant attempt at recapturing the party guy, fun time Limp Bizkit band of yesteryear. The rapping is just god-awful. The lyrics are awful. He's trying to infuse this kind of cockiness and arrogance that I just can tell he doesn't feel to be true anymore for himself. I mean, he was probably, in his 20s when Chocolate Starfish came out. 10 years removed, he probably doesn't feel those same ways again, but this is the character that he's built for himself, so he's got to play the part, and that's what it feels like. Feels very inauthentic. He's even doing some throwbacks to, like, their more popular era, like, the song Shark Attack opens with him going, "It's just one of those days." And, of course, he goes into different lyrics. He doesn't, it's not like they're remaking break stuff, but whenever you're a band and you have to, like, call back to, like, a more popular time in your career, that's never usually a good sign. The song Walking Away, it feels like it's one of those attempts at, like, recreating one of those more ballady Limp Bizkit songs, like Rearranged or even Behind Blue Eyes, but it just doesn't get there. Yeah, this album just was hot garbage, flagrant attempt at doing a Chocolate Starfish Part 2, and goes in the D tier. Limp Bizkit Still Sucks, which came out last year. They have finally accepted and have become self-aware of their place in the culture as kind of being this corny, Fred Durst is corny, but the band rocks. That's kind of the whole mantra, right? It's like, the lyrics suck, they've always sucked, but the music kicks ass. And, when Fred does his screams, it can be, powerful and put you in the mood to thrash. And even his singing at some points is decent. I never hated his vocals. So yeah, that's where they're at now with this record. And it's kind of like, hey, we're Limp Bizkit. You know what you're getting into with our sound. You know what you're getting into with the whole shtick that we're doing. And now, we're no longer crowd surfing on plywood. We know we're all old. We named the record Still Sucks. The lead single was called Dad Vibes. And it kind of rocked. I mean, even Anthony Fantano, the much lauded, greatest music critic of all time, or busiest music critic of all time, he even had good things to say about Dad Vibes whenever that single came out. Then they have songs like Turn It Up, Bitch, which is basically just embracing, like, classic Limp Bizkit, but it didn't suck for some reason. It felt like they'd taken so much time away from it to where when they got back together, it felt fresh. It kind of makes sense as to why bands like, say, Tool would take so long in between records, because when you're making music that's that unique, you definitely need a long period of time to make sure it's good, although Tool's last album bored me to sleep, but that's a different story. So they have a cover on this record, like they do. It's kind of like a Limp Bizkit tradition to do a cover song on each record. Although I don't think Chocolate Starfish had one, but I don't think Significant Other did either. But either way, on this one, it is "Don't Change" by INXS. I was not familiar with that INXS song before listening to this record. When I was listening to "Don't Change," I was like, man, this, like, they're doing like a good, like, Limp Bizkit acoustic ballad. Like, I didn't think they had it in them anymore. And then I realized it's a cover, and I listened to the cover, and I really like I like the original version. So, kind of turned me on to another INXS song I didn't really know existed. There's a lot of songs on here that kind of feel like jokey, like not real songs, like the song Love the Hate, where Fred and this other guy are doing this back and forth where they're basically just dissing the band and Limp Bizkit and just kind of saying the things that people have been saying about Limp Bizkit for the past 20 years, about how they're corny, they suck, Fred Durst is awful, and then they have the song Barnacle. All these songs average about 2 minutes or under. They are not very long songs at all, which is the format nowadays in the music industry. Fred is very savvy of all this, and he implements those changes in how they did things. When you harken back to Results May Vary, where each song's averaging 4.5 fucking minutes, which is way too long, now they're barely hitting 2 minutes. So, shaving off the fat. They take on multiple genres on this record, like punk, heavy metal, the rap rock stuff, still throwing the hip-hop stuff in there. Fred's not really screaming as much on this record at all, because I don't think he really can anymore. Anybody who screams wrong with and they don't use the right technique, they will literally lose the ability to do that as they get older. I would say half this record is good. Kind of like $3 Bill Y'all. Like, half of the record is listenable and decent. It was an impressive effort after being away for so long. I will put it in the B tier, and I will say, if Limp Bizkit had followed Chocolate Starfish up with this record instead of Results May Vary, I think their momentum and their relevance would have kept going into the 2000s easily, because I think that this would have been a great follow-up record. But, you know, no one even really used the word dad vibes in the early 2000s, so this is kind of an album that could only be born as a product of its time. But, yeah, so I think this is a pretty good list here. We've got, you know, your S tier album, Significant Other, then Hot Dog. Their first album and their last album are, you know, decent. Then you have their middle / end period stuff was shit, who's not good. So, yeah, I think that's the video. Time flew by. Guess I was having fun. Hope you had fun watching it. Let me know what your rankings are for the Bizkit, and you know, let's go ahead and rank Corey Feldman's albums next. The Fell Dog. Just kidding, or maybe I'm serious. Anyway, until next time, have a good rest of your night.